Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank the Finnish authorities and the different partners and the organizers to have convened this meeting. As it was said previously, it follows the first meeting we had 2 years ago in Tallinn, and I think it's quite important to have this kind of more international meetings to exchange precisely the experience and the issues also that we face, because it's only through this international cooperation that we can better our way of working. So that is the goal of all the international conventions and frameworks that we're developing, is trying to bring some kind of international expertise between the different countries in order to do that. And for that, I don't know what is the level of knowledge, because if all are friends of Faro around the table, it will be something a little bit redundant, what I will present initially, but I suspect that some people maybe are not so aware of what are the principles who are around the Faro Convention. And as you see in my title, I have put the stress on this concept of a collaborative effort on heritage. And I think that that is maybe one of the main important things in the case of the Faro Convention with respect to other conventions that we have mentioned. It's the fact that it's something that insists on this need of putting together the different actors in order to do it better. Because we have seen that for many years it was essentially a matter of the governments at different levels to develop this protection of the cultural heritage. But as has been pointed out, now it's even more pressing nowadays to have this collaborative approach to try to develop at least the same level of protection, if not to improve it and to enrich it with additional things. So I will just very quickly recall what is the situation. As you know, the Council of Europe has this work essentially to define some kind of conventions who determine general principles that we propose to the countries to develop on different topics. You have, I think, 150 conventions nowadays, the Council of Europe, of all the sectors. And one of them, of course, it's the cultural heritage, because cultural heritage, it's a very important thing from the beginning of the Council of Europe. This year we are celebrating the 75th anniversary of the Council of Europe, but it's also the 70th anniversary of the European Cultural Convention, who is the foundational point of the work of the Council of Europe in terms of culture. And I think it's very important to recall that this convention was the second one after the one on the human rights, who you all know, who was adopted by the Council of Europe, proving that the founding fathers of the Council of Europe put a very important stress on the cultural aspects. We have to think we were getting out of the Second World War, and we all know that the cultural aspects were also very important in the spring of this war. Unfortunately, we see that it continues to be the case, as culture continues to be one of the targets of the multiple wars that we see, unfortunately, in our world. So just to recall, what is the situation nowadays? It's a framework convention who was adopted in 2005. So next year we will celebrate the 20th anniversary. It entered into force in 2011, but that is a detail because it's technicalities of the ratifications. We have enough countries ratified to put it in force. And nowadays we have 24 countries who are ratified and 5 who have signed it. And I'm happy to say that the last one who signed was the Netherlands, and this afternoon, sorry, I thought it was tomorrow. This afternoon we will have a presentation on the approach that the Netherlands have chosen before ratifying. So very quickly, what are the main ideas? Well, the first thing is, if you look, it's a framework convention. So from this point of view, you don't have the strict situation where you have a set of different things to set up. It's more general. It defines more principles and broad areas of action. That makes also that then the implementation and the actual actions to be taken are given more to the states who are responsible to find the best way to implement these principles that they have adopted by ratifying or signing it. Consequently, it doesn't create specific obligations to do something. It suggests more than it imposes. But nevertheless, the principles that I will discuss later has to be taken on board. If it's clearly something who is addressed to the countries, it's each country who can adopt it. But nevertheless, it has a very important impact in all the actors who are also involved in the sector. So it's not just something who has to be limited to a decision of the government, and that's all. And what we are trying to push is to advance on the enabling measures that can promote these principles of Faro. So just to keep it simple is really to know that it's something who has to be elaborated. And I think that this second seminar will put the stress more on the implementation phases, especially in the case of Finland, who has already ratified. And so you are in this first step that I will explain a little bit after to be developed. As it was said, I think it's important to understand what is the main novelty of this convention, because we already have, as already told, two important conventions adopted in the cultural heritage sector. The one is Grenada on architectural heritage. It will be also then it's the 14th anniversary next year. And the second one was the archaeological heritage Tavaleta, who was adopted. But these two were essentially responding to the question how we have to protect. But I think the Faro Convention brings a little bit light on why we have to protect. It's not because it's only because it's historical, it's artistically sound to preserve it, but it's also important because behind the heritage you have all the human dimension. And I think that human dimension was, in fact, if you read more in detail the European Cultural Convention back in '54, there was already inside. So I think it's some kind of return to the basis or the approach that was leading the work on the cultural heritage. It was essentially launched through the importance for the people, and especially, for example, the exchange between the different people in Europe, than really on the actual way of protecting the heritage. I think that also there's two things who are important who appear more. So the first one is to give this cultural heritage some responsibility to everyone. So it's not only something to be responsible for the governments. It's a little bit the old-fashioned way of thinking about cultural heritage. Of course, something has to be protected. It's for the community, so it's the authorities who has to develop it. And this has to be done on the benefit of the whole society. So for that, as has been pointed out, one important thing is to develop the democratic participation, to bring in all the actors, including the plain civil society, who will use it, and also the social responsibility to correspond to this participation, because that is also an important point. The thing is to consider that heritage is a resource, and it's a resource not just only on development, but as we will see, it's also a resource for the society and the development of the society. And that is very much well emphasized in one article of the convention itself, where we insist on the shared responsibility for the common environment in which they live. Another point is also to use this heritage, as I was saying, also in a more social way. It's also to try to promote the cohesive societies. And in this case, the Faro Convention recognized that heritage can lead to some conflict of interpretation and things like that. But that this work has to be taken on board and discussed instead of put it apart and then springing as a real conflict between the people. So the idea is that we can have a situation where you have different approaches of the cultural heritage, but the different approaches has to be put together and discussed in order to make emerge some common values with respect to that. And it's a way also to avoid really this conflict, because you change it in a dialogue between the different parties. And so that helps to manage this cultural diversity. So that I insisted a lot, because some places the Faro Convention is a little bit afraid in the governments, because they are feeling that you are giving the voice to some populations who can be problematic. And I think it's better sometimes to discuss with the people and to arrive to an arrangement and discussion before arriving to a real conflict. So the Faro Convention says that in this domain, it should be better to precisely involve everyone in order to take on board these potential conflicts in order that they don't materialize afterwards. And it helps, of course, to develop the mutual understanding of people. So I will go very quickly on that because you can find it in the brochure that I will signal you later on. But I think I will highlight 6 points that are also important in the Faro Convention. First thing, the Faro Convention pushes for a broader understanding of cultural heritage. The idea is that the cultural heritage is not something who is determined just by the specialists saying that historically this is the value or not. The thing is that we try to involve the communities and the society in the definition of the cultural heritage. Of course, that brings a difficulty because, of course, you don't have the traditional way of evaluating something who is historical. Of course, if it's a Baroque church, it's quite easy. But if we are talking about something who is less, has a less artistic and historical content, but for the society it's important because it corresponds to something that is important for them. And we were discussing talking about the communities' houses, it's clearly something. Maybe historically they don't have an importance, but in terms of the society, it's something very important. The second point is the importance also of the meaning of this cultural heritage. It's not just the building, but what is behind the building and what are the practices if we are talking about craftsmanship. And use what is the appreciation of the people in more generally in defining what should be interesting to protect. And sometimes we have this surprise that quite minimal things are for the people very important from the historical point of view, while quite obvious historical important venues are less important for them. And we have to consolidate these two things in order to make them more involved in the cultural heritage management. As we say, the idea is also to use a cultural heritage not only seen as an expenditure in terms of maintenance and things like that, but a resource, and a resource on the different sectors, particularly sustainable development, and also the importance of the quality of life. I don't enter in the details because we have short time, but as I say also, one thing it's useful not only to address things related to cultural heritage, but it spreads also and can have an important role in discussing issues related to human rights and democracy. And I think that the idea of having at both this right to heritage, who is included in the Faro Convention, but also the associated responsibility of the people who are involved in this management, all the people, it's important to foster this human right and democracy aspect. Of course, all that, and maybe that allow us to move a little bit to the more implementation issue. Clearly, if you adopt these different concepts, the role of the authorities in the governance and the management of cultural heritage has in some sense to be adapted, because you have to take on board all these principles if you give more responsibilities to other actors. Maybe what is important is that it's not meaning that you have to go to a single situation where it's the bottom activities who will rule everything. It's clear that it's not the case. The role of the different authorities will have to remain, but it has to be maybe adjusted to take on board this implication of far more actors and people interested in the cultural heritage. So the idea is to have first an integrated approach. Many times the issues on cultural heritage are not related only to the cultural heritage sector, because we can see it. I think that coming here, I heard about some issues about construction of a bridge to come here, but there is questions about what will be the urban development that can generate this issue, and so on, and also the impact on the cultural heritage. So we see that we cannot work in a vacuum just on the matter of cultural heritage. So this integrated approach with different sectors is very, in different domains, it's very important. And the other part is to find a way to better cooperate with all the stakeholders. Of course, we can have a joint action, we can have a complementarity, so we share responsibilities, or even we can have situations where there is some delegation to the civil society of the management. And one prerequisite to all that is that, of course, all the people are aware of their potential role in this process, and for that you need to improve the awareness and the access to cultural heritage to everyone. So that is a complementary part that has to accompany these principles. So, as it is a convention, there's different steps. The first step, the simplest one, is the signature. The signature is the fact that one country says that they will to apply these principles in their policies. So that is just an expression of intent, but it's not binding too much for the moment. When you pass to the ratification, of course, here the idea is that when you have the ratification, you consider also the implications of these principles in your actual procedures, legislation, and so on. And that is the place where you can have some kind of adjustments of the legislation. That proves already a better, a more constant, more long-term commitment of the authorities with the principles of the Faro Convention. But until the ratification, you don't need, in some sense, to ask yourself what will be the next step. And that is the most important and the one that we will try to address during this seminar, because I don't know the countries who are present, but if we are talking, for example, Estonia and Finland, who were the two last hosts of this seminar, in fact, both countries have ratified. So the question is essentially, what is this next step? But for other countries, I'm thinking if we have representatives from Sweden or Denmark or Lithuania, who are countries who has not yet signed, of course, these two phases are very important. And I think that in this case, well, we will come later on, but the practices that has been developed in Finland in terms of before the signature to have some intensive exchange between the different stakeholders on the implications and to have a collective also proposal on the signature or not of the Faro Convention, I think it's a very important one in order to prepare already this next step. So what is this third step for first the national authorities? We'll see that I will try to address the different implications for the different actors from the side essentially of the authorities. Well, the implementation is simply transforming the words that we have in actions. As I say, this is a common task to be developed and it can be preferably prepared before the signature and ratification. And I think tomorrow, for example, we will have the presentation from the Dutch authorities who has, as I say, ratified at the beginning of this year the convention, and they have chosen also an alternative way that the one that used Finland, but in a sort to begin before that the signature was taken place, already to have settled up something that can support this signature and ratification that we hope soon. The thing is, I cannot propose you some kind of master plan of implementation, because clearly we are in a domain where it has to be adapted precisely to the way that the country is developing their own cultural policy. We were discussing before, we have countries in France who are more centralized than others, where, of course, the action of the government will be essential to put forward. Other countries who have a very big decentralization, like in Spain, where we are working with the ministry, but also with the regional authorities, because the regional authorities have most of the responsibility on cultural heritage than the government, central government. So clearly you have to adapt to the specific principles. But the idea is that you keep on in this process considering the Faro Convention principles more than defining then or that action to be taken. Of course, the idea is to take advantage of this international experience and to discuss, and I think that, let's say, Finland is a good example. Switzerland also made a very important work in the preparation of the signature. But in any case, the big point is really to have all the actors on board, because it's, I think, the only way to really have a leverage effect by the collaboration of the different persons. I will not enter here too much in detail because I have very few minutes. Of course, you can have different actions, and I have presented a few of them. But as I say, it's also very important to consider that the local authorities, yes, time is running very quickly in Finland. So the local authorities also have an important role. I don't know the situation in Finland, but in other countries it's clear that it's very important. Of course, the local authorities cannot sign the Faro Convention, but nevertheless they can take decisions to incorporate these principles also in their own municipal work. And I think it's a very interesting and promising approach also, because a lot of places this cascade principle makes that it's really the municipality who has to deal with the practicalities and is the one who will deal with the initiatives because they are essential and local. So for example, in Italy we have a little village of Fontecchio or Castiglione del Lago who has already endorsed the principles of Faro Convention. And in France, where the government is not keen on signing, we have hopefully quite important cities like Rouen or Nantes who has already taken decisions at the municipal level to apply the principles of Faro Convention in their municipal policy. So this idea of having an involvement, direct involvement in local authorities is also interesting. There was before say, well, what will be the work that can be done by the different I think, of course, the easy thing is to give a financial support, but as I say, nowadays it's complicated. But I will always insist a lot in also the facilitate the initiatives, because the problem sometimes the initiatives that we have is that they face some kind of intellectual or barriers on the involvement of the civil society. And I think that is something that has to be worked out, and also to give access to some expertise, for example, because of course the initiatives are very interesting and very motivated people, but they're lacking sometimes the expertise. But this expertise sometimes is lying in the national level or the local level in the different sectors. So that can be some kind of, let's say less expensive contribution to the initiative to facilitate them some tools, some staff and things like that, instead of saying, okay, we'll give you 10,000 euros or something like that, which is more difficult nowadays. And the other point that is important is that when the decisions on cultural heritage are made, we also try to involve as much as possible the civil society, because we have seen so many cases where they were not involved and afterwards there's a conflict, and with the time we realized that the initiatives were right in some sense, but we have lost a lot of time discussing and changing the mind. I can give you the example of Novi Sad in Serbia, where the municipality wanted to erase a historical quarter. The inhabitants reacted to that and forced the municipality to change their mind. And nowadays the municipality is the opposite, is the ally of this association who was protecting the cultural heritage, because they understood that the cultural heritage was more attractive globally than the new road that they wanted to build, destroying the historical part. So they changed completely their mind, and now they are pushing strongly for this cultural heritage approach of the urbanization. Okay. And of course, then the question, but I think that we can discuss later on. Yes, we have, yeah. It's -2. I didn't see the minus.
I'm sorry, but I have
No.
a bad copy now.
Yeah. Good, because it's my last slide. So, and I will not go too much into it, because I think it will be more interesting to discuss it, because the point is afterwards how the grassroots initiatives can be affected by that and should contribute to implementation. Of course, they have an important role, and they have to respect also within the initiative these principles. So this openness, this participation of everyone in involvement. And I think that is something that has to be kept in mind also by the initiatives. But as we will have the initiatives presented afterwards, I think it will be more interesting to discuss it on the practical examples that we will see that trying to establish some general rules will remain general. So with that, I will finish. You can have more information on the website of the Council of Europe. And if you want to have more time to read, we have a Faro Convention brochure, who's already available in 9 languages nowadays, but but not yet in Finnish. So it's a call to have a look, and if you think that it's a good tool for diffusing the principles of our convention, we insisted on the idea of having as much languages as possible, because we are addressing grassroots initiatives, and many of them are very interesting, but now not fluent in French or English, who are the traditional languages of the international institutions. So clearly, it's a wish that it's not a very technical document, it's more a presentation one with some examples of initiatives. I think it's quite interesting for the people to have an insight. In your case, you are in Finland and in Nordic countries, everyone is fluent in English, so it's not too much problematic, but in other countries, clearly it's a very important point to have the material in the local languages in order to facilitate that population take on board that. And with that, I apologize, as you understand, I'm not Scandinavian, I'm from the south, so it's very difficult for me to stick to the to the hours, because the concept of time is quite relative in our perimeters. Thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you the best for this meeting. I'm looking forward to very interesting discussions and presentations. Thank you.
Yes, I'm Minna Karvonen from the Ministry of Education and Culture from Finland, and I'm going to speak briefly about the spirit of Faro Convention in our culture policy. We have in Finland this principle of open government, and I think it's really interesting that we are now running the 5th government action plan for open government, and the keywords are trust and participation and understandability. And there are many measures. Here is a short list. Openness in preparing policy measures and continuing the related dialogue. This sounds very much like Faro. Encounters with public services, cooperation between different actors in society to combat deliberate and unintentional dissemination of misinformation and disinformation, and closer cooperation and more effective utilization and sharing of good practices in Finland and internationally. So when we talk about the national dialogues and encounters with public services in the action plan now, we will strengthen the inclusion, mutual understanding, and the knowledge base in preparing of policy measures through dialogues. And we have also kind of practical tools for that. So it's not only about hearings, it's something more cool. And then we will support democracy by improving encounters with public services. When it comes to reliable information and cooperation in strengthening competence and participation, we prevent deliberate and unintentional dissemination of misinformation and disinformation through expertise and reliable information. And what is interesting is that we actually have these quite many people coming and groups coming to the Ministry of Education, and they are really interested in our programs and our kind of deep understanding of media literacy. And that's something quite, I could even describe it as an export product or service for Finland, because we are very famous of this, and it has a deep connection to this thing. And then we will establish the operating model of the Open Government Civil Society Academy nationally and at the regional level in order to deepen the cooperation. And then we try to support for the open government actors in Finland and also internationally. So we will enhance the sharing of good practices in open government, and we will launch an open democracy network. So this is what is happening right now in Finland. And it's the 5th term, so we are really believers in this thing. But now I would like to tell you about two cases of open government, and so this might shed some light to what we are actually doing in the field of culture and cultural heritage. The first case is drawing up of an implementation plan for cultural heritage strategy, and I'm going to talk more about the process and less about the content. So the Finnish government actually adopted a resolution on the cultural heritage strategies in February 2023, and this is a very big thing for us because this was the first time ever. And in the resolution it states that as a follow-up of the cultural heritage strategy, we are going to draw up a plan to implement the strategy. And actually what is going to be in the implementation plan is quite the way it always is, so nothing new in the content. But what we try to do is we try to really kind of, do it together. And that's something new in a deep sense of the meaning of this word. I'm going to dig into that. When we had the public consultation about the draft for the strategy, so we actually asked those hundreds and hundreds of organizations how they would like to contribute to the implementation plan, and then we built up a way to do it. So we didn't have a huge working group that would kind of, draw up the plan together. We decided to have this series of different kind of meetings and surveys to make it happen, and I'm happy for it, although it's like time consuming, like really a burden for the ministry. At the same time it's something really new and interesting, and I feel that there's much more space for us to really have a true dialogue and not to wait in a big meeting for your 1 minute to say something like and that's it. So in last December we had a background survey and 4 open workshops for heritage communities, and there were like 200 survey responses, 120 workshop participants. This year, April, we had 4 workshops for invited groups, 120 participants again. This summer we had an open online survey with over 100 responses, and just now we are having a series of workshops for ministries and for agencies and for organizations. And then we are going to have the draft for the implementation plan, and then we are going to circulate it for comments in December. So this is what is happening, and we have hundreds and hundreds of pages of proposals, and I don't know how we are going to handle it all, but it's a lesson to be learned for the ministry. I think it's good for us to kind of, to really, understand the reality better than we usually do. We are good in strategies and legislation, but when it comes to kind of, more kind of, operational level, so it's good to sometimes at least for half a year be there and only listen. Just a few words about the strategy. It actually has a definition for cultural heritage, and then it's kind of, has 4 different thematic areas. And the first one is responsibility which people and communities have for upholding a diverse cultural heritage and promoting cultural heritage. This is very much a Faro thing, and this is the first theme. The second theme is cultural heritage, nature and climate change. Third one is culture, heritage, learning skills, competence and research, and fourth one is sustainable use of the economic potential of cultural heritage. And now that we have this kind of dialogues in drawing up the implementation plan, it's interesting that the 3 first ones are kind of, we have so many proposals. When it comes to the 4th one, so nobody wants to say anything. So it's kind of, could you please take care of that stuff? there at the ministry. That's interesting because it's difficult for us to talk about the economy, and I think that there's a lot for us to do in the very near future to make a good future in the long run. These themes include 16 objectives, 54 measures. We have a vision for the cultural heritage that I'm not going to speak out loud because I don't have so many minutes. But what is interesting is the definition of the cultural heritage, because that's kind of, scary, isn't it, to have that? And at the same time, you should do that, because then you have to know what you're actually talking about. That here is what we have created, and it is in a state resolution, so it will stay there for at least a decade or so. So cultural heritage is brought into being as a result of human activity and in interaction with the environment. It reflects changes in values, beliefs, knowledge, skills and traditions. Cultural heritage can be tangible, intangible or digital. Cultural heritage is regenerated, preserved and passed on to future generations. This is what we created. There are links to other strategic policies. One is the European Agenda for Culture. Then the Faro Convention is in the middle of the thing. So we think really that the strategy serves as an instrument for implementing the Faro Convention. And then it also promotes the achievements of UNESCO's Sustainable Development Goals of the Agenda 2030. The second case is preparation of the report on culture policy. So Prime Minister Petteri Orpo's government decided in its 2023 program to draw up a culture policy report. It should create an ambitious vision for the future to enable the long-term development of Finnish culture policy, and it will outline the key actions to achieve this vision. And what we are trying to do right now is to submit the report to the Parliament during this autumn session, and it's a lot. And now about the process. So it's in a way the same kind of new way of doing things at the Ministry of Education and Culture. So there is a typo actually in the first bullet. So the working group started in November last year and not in March. I would have wanted to have it from March, but it isn't, and it's ended its session in August. And then we had the background survey with 300 responses. Then we had the online survey, which was kind of open throughout the process for, again, about 300 responses. We had 6 regional touring places all over Finland, from Inari, like really from Lapland to the southern Finland, with discussions with the regions, basically some individuals, but organizations and the governing bodies. Then we had 50 discussion sessions with stakeholders, with 1,000 participants. We had an online discussion events for key cultural organizations, 60 of them. We have open living room discussions for all. There was an introduction from the working group member and then a discussion. And then we had an Instagram campaign for young adults. And then we are going to circulate this draft report for comments, and the circulation period is right now on. So it's going to end on 14th of October, and then we will have, I would guess, about 1,000 responses. And the report presents a vision for culture policy, but there are 4 objectives. One is culture is force for change. The second one is culture creators and contents are the key for well-being and future. Third one is culture is everyone's right, and the fourth one is international impact arises from culture. And then we are going to draw up necessary common guidelines and measures that will kind of make this all happen. This is something that I will skip. And then, why this is important? It's important because it really kind of outlines what we are going to do till 2040. it's really has the cultural heritage in the middle of the report, which is in a way something new. It sounds awful, but I think that we quite often are more kind of, interested in this kind of reports of the, yes, 5 minutes, I'm going to make it even less. Interested in kind of, artists and arts, because of course that's something which is like on the baseline, but cultural heritage is quite often kind of, we think that, well, they are doing their stuff, so they are going to have their own strategy. And what is good, this is, for the whole culture policy report. So it will be kind of, almost like really on the kind of, front line of the whole report, this heritage sector and its problems and its challenges and its future and its deep meaning for the well-being of people and community and society. So, and then I think, well, how this is going to be successful. So it will be if it inspires the culture sector and gives people something to aspire to, but we have to also kind of, really kind of, make it happen. And that means like everybody should make it happen. The government and the associations and the governmental bodies and the people and the communities. So it's not going to be kind of, you just leave it on the shelf and that's it. So it will kind of, guide us. And then we are going to have a very practical implementation plan for our culture policy report. And we will have many of them, because we are going to have this as our guiding kind of, book for the till 2040s, if we are lucky. So this is what's going to happen in Finland, and I think that both processes are really interesting and something new for us, and it's a lesson to be learned from me, because I'm like old school civil servant, and I have to learn new habits, and I hope that I already have. So thanks a lot for listening. It has been a pleasure to have you here. Thank you.
The title of my presentation is Implementing the Faro Convention, a Norwegian Perspective. Norway ratified the Faro Convention 28th of October 2008. The ratification process took place without any major discussions. In my opinion, this was mainly due to the fact that the essence and main objectives of the convention was considered to a large extent to be in line with the established management models and ways of thinking. Norway and the Norwegian member of the responsible steering committee in the Council of Europe at that time, Dag Myklebust, had also been actively involved in the drafting process, emphasizing the relevance and importance of the Faro Convention, and thus also paved the way for an understanding and acceptance at national level. In this presentation, I will offer a few examples of mechanisms and approaches that were already in place in 2008. I will give a few examples of the role taken by the national authorities to increase civil society participation and some recent developments. And at the end, I will try also to say something about future challenges and opportunities. As already mentioned, several management models or mechanisms in line with the spirit of the Faro Convention were already established when the convention was ratified. I will briefly mention 4 of these in chronological order. The Sami Parliament was established in 1989. In 1994, the responsibility for the identification and management of the cultural heritage of the Sami indigenous people was delegated to a Sami Heritage Board, and later in 2001 to the Sami Parliament, thus giving the indigenous group strong influence over decisions concerning their own heritage. In 1994, an umbrella organization called the Norwegian Federation of Cultural Heritage Organizations was established. primarily based on an initiative of the Ministry of Climate and Environment. The ambition was to encourage and give economic support to the non-profit organizations within the heritage field and to encourage involvement of civil society. Today, the Federation has 31 member organizations with a total of 270,000 members. The third example is the Norwegian Cultural Heritage Fund, which was established in 2002. The main objective was to give private owners an economic incentive to maintain and restore locally important heritage. And finally, in 2008, the new Plan and Building Act was passed by Parliament. The new law had statutory objectives related to citizens' involvement and the role of local democracy. All of these mechanisms and approaches have been further enhanced in the years after the ratification of the Convention. In addition to enhancing the existing mechanisms and management models, new initiatives and projects have been established since 2008. I will give two examples from the period 2008 to 2020. First, the Cultural Heritage Search Service. This is a digital infrastructure for documenting, mapping, and sharing local heritage. It enables citizens, local and national organizations, and public management to collect, register, and disseminate knowledge about local heritage monuments and sites. At the core of the initiative lies the ambition to enable local participation and democratic involvement through the use of low-cost, user-friendly technology familiar to the broad public. Secondly, local heritage plans. This is an initiative with the objective to strengthen local competence and capacity through planning. Municipalities received a small startup grant to prepare local heritage plans, focusing on local awareness raising and locally based priorities through the democratization of selection processes. I will tell a little bit more about the local heritage plans. An evaluation of this initiative by Minna Economics in 2020 indicates that 83% of the municipalities that received a startup grant responded that the cultural heritage work in the municipality had been improved. This includes, among other things, an increased local political awareness. 75% of the participating municipalities reported an increased awareness among the politicians. Some municipalities also responded that the process led to a far better connection and dialogue with civil society and strengthened the sense of belonging to a community. However, it seems to vary a lot how successful the municipalities have been in involving the civil society. An important factor in this seemed to be the municipality's ability to run effective and open processes with good progress and clearly defined objectives. According to the evaluation report, the initiative has led to an increased focus on cultural heritage as a resource in local development, tourism, public health, and outdoor recreation. There has been an increased interest and participation among politicians, volunteers, and local organizations, and increased awareness of the diversity of cultural monuments, sites, and environments in the municipalities. I will then move on to 2020. In 2020, a set of new national goals for Norway's cultural environment policy were presented for Parliament in a white paper. The white paper was adopted by Parliament in June the same year. The former national goals were adopted in 2005 with a duration of 15 years. Also, the challenges facing society in 2020 were considered to be different from the challenges in 2005. Based on this, there was a desire to reorient the priorities and the ambitions. It was considered to be a need for new goals that could indicate more clearly what Norway wanted to achieve with the cultural environment policy and how the cultural environment contributes to promoting positive, sustainable development. And, just as important, there was a will to describe how Norway should follow up the ambitions and responsibilities in light of international treaties and conventions, in particular the ones that had been ratified after 2005. The Faro Convention was one of these. And the new goals are very much inspired by the Faro Convention, the Faro Principles, as well as the Council of Europe Heritage Strategy for the 21st century. Whereas previous national goals were focusing on conservation and protection measures, the new goals focus on involvement, sustainability, and diversity. The national goals that were adopted by Parliament are as follows. Everyone shall have the opportunity to get involved in and assume responsibility for the cultural environment. The cultural environment shall contribute to sustainable development through integrated land use and social planning. A diversity of cultural environments shall be preserved as a basis for knowledge, experience, and use. The first goal is based on the rationale of the Faro Convention and was deliberately chosen to be the first goal. Even though there is no order of ranking, this was considered to be given to give a strong signal. The goal places the human being at the center, also in line with the UN 2003 Convention for the Safeguarding of the Intangible Cultural Heritage, which also came about in the same period as the Faro Convention. In the white paper, it is emphasized that participation in all parts of civil society is important for democracy and for individuals. Volunteering is an important arena and meeting place to facilitate people's right to preserve and to take part in their own culture and cultural heritage. Voluntary work also helps safeguard the cultural environment, promote inclusion, and prevent exclusion. Craftsmanship, skills, and know-how in old crafts and knowledge of traditional materials are also emphasized. The second goal, in short called the sustainability goal. Like all other sectors and institutions, the cultural environment sector must also contribute to achieving the UN's 17 sustainability goal and the concept of sustainability's three overarching dimensions: environmental, social, and economic sustainability. And the third goal, also referred to as the diversity goal, is to a large extent a continuation of former objectives. The goal emphasizes that the elements that are preserved should demonstrate the cultural, social, and geographical diversity from different areas and help document and explain the historical developments and how people at all times have interacted with and adapted to nature and their environments. Still, the last part of the sentence, which reads "preserved as a basis for knowledge, experience, and use," emphasizes the underlying objective, which is to have a greater awareness on who should we be doing this for and why. A system with performance indicators and governance data structure has been established in order to be able to monitor the developments and the degree of attainment of the goals. This is a system with 7 indicators. One of these indicators is focusing on participation in cultural heritage-related work. The 2024 update indicates that 37% of the population define themselves as very or somewhat interested in cultural monuments, sites, and environments. 9% of the population answer that they have participated actively in heritage-related voluntary work. That is the blue line on this picture. 10% answer that they have been involved in the protection of local cultural environments the last 12 months, the dark green line on the top. The answers indicate that the older part of the population is more active than the younger ones, while there is no difference between the genders. Some future challenges or opportunities. In line with the priorities presented in the white paper, there is a need to continue the work on encouraging increased involvement and participation in the management of cultural environments and in the decision processes in particular. We still need to highlight the importance of creating an enabling environment for civil participation at national and local level and promote the engagement of individuals, non-governmental organizations, and civil society at large in decision-making processes. Another important and highly relevant discussion is related to emergency preparedness and resilience. How do we enhance social sustainability and resilience by establishing participative approaches driven by shared social-cultural values? In an article by Laia Kolomer from 2023 with the title Participation and Cultural Heritage Management in Norway, Who, When and How People Participate, which was published in the International Journal of Cultural Policy, she argues that, and I quote, "There is a gap between ideals of participation and the existing legal framework, between a very encouraging narrative and restricted lawful schemes," end quote. This is particularly the case for the Cultural Heritage Act from 1979 and is definitely a challenge. In line with the priorities of the White Paper, a process of drafting a new Cultural Environment Act has started. A public panel has been established and they will deliver the proposal early next year. As part of their mandate, they will discuss whether the management of cultural environments is organized and exercised in accordance with Norway's international obligations. This also includes the Faro Convention. So to conclude, even though several management models or mechanisms to implement the Faro Convention has been established, there is still a lot to be done. The next few years will hopefully show some positive developments. In this perspective, a seminar like the one we are part of today is an important arena for learning from each other and inspiring each other. I wish you all a productive seminar and I hope you will be able to enjoy the beautiful Suomenlinna. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you and welcome to Suomenlinna from my part. My name is Petteri Takkula and I work as a development manager for the governing body of Suomenlinna. The governing body is a government agency under the Ministry of Education and Culture, and we restore, maintain, administer, develop and provide information about the World Heritage Site. I was asked to talk about how today's topic, the Faro Convention, influenced the rewriting of the Suomenlinna World Heritage Site Management Plan. In the 2010s, the Faro Convention was a hot topic among the heritage professionals, and I will now talk about how the similar goals that both of these conventions, the World Heritage Convention and the Faro Convention, encouraged us to achieve goals that are very, very similar in some ways. As we were preparing the rework of the management plan, the Faro framework of cultural heritage as both a right and as a tangible and intangible resource for better life correlated inspiringly with all the other UNESCO, European level, national and local strategies and guidelines. A management plan for a World Heritage Site is an integrated planning and action concept expected of all the World Heritage properties. It lays down goals and measures for protection, conservation, use and development of the World Heritage Site. The party responsible for the management plan is the site manager. In our case, it's the governing body of Suomenlinna that I'm here representing. A management plan is not a legally binding document, but a voluntary agreement between the stakeholders, a self-commitment of all the interested parties to act towards common goals that were agreed upon in a participatory process. And this, I think, sounds like very much like a Faro Convention compatible process. In 2017 to 2019, the management plan was completely reworked. As a site manager, we coordinated and completed the task. According to UNESCO guidelines and inspired by the Faro Convention, we wanted to apply a participatory approach. We as heritage professionals provided our expertise to engage a multi-perspective heritage experience of a widest possible amount of people, communities and organizations that have a stake in the World Heritage Site's future. In my opinion, the most fruitful meetings were the open workshops. We wanted to mix and match people in the work groups, to have city planners, tourism service providers, heritage professionals and local residents work together to solve problems and forecast future possibilities. You can see here the amount of work we did and the amount of workshops we had. And at the moment we are in a situation where we are revising the management plan. It's not a complete rework like we did in 2017-19, but a revision of the current work. We also cooperated with the ICOMOS Finnish National Committee and observing the successes and challenges of our workshops and referring to the Faro Convention's aim to place cultural heritage communities at the center of concern, Kirsti Kovanen and Margareta Erström outlined a new type of stage-by-stage operational model for evaluating and supporting participation in cultural heritage. And we felt very honored to have had a part in this modeling, and I encourage you to download it. There's a QR code on the screen if you want to use that. The Faro Convention, the new UNESCO management guidelines, and also, for example, Elinor Ostrom's principles of sustainable governance of common pool resources were strong drivers from our part. We didn't, however, expressly formulate them to the participants of the workshops, but rather hinted at them through the way the workshops were structured and conducted. We thought it was important to make sure that the stakeholders felt that they were being heard because they are all important and not just because there is this shiny new convention that the site manager wanted to apply. It also helped that the promotion of a wider understanding of heritage and its relationship to communities and society in general was not a new and untested idea to Suomenlinna. The World Heritage Convention and its so-called 5 Cs strategy include, among conservation, capacity building and credibility, also communication and communities. And these are very important notes to the World Heritage Sites to recognize that even though cultural heritage has an intrinsic value, objects and places acquire meaning only through their relationship to people. And it has long been recognized, and the workshops reinforced this, that Suomenlinna is valuable because of the meanings and uses that people attach to the fortress and the values that the communities feel that it carries and represents. The number of stakeholders in a place like Suomenlinna is quite significant. And since the aim of the management plan is to allocate responsibilities and resources systematically, there needs to be a lot of communication and trust between these stakeholders. It also forces us to rethink our role as heritage professionals. We have to see ourselves much more as inspirers. We must communicate earlier and be prepared to justify and validate our message in a target group related manner. Emphasizing the intrinsic importance of cultural heritage is essential, but for it to be effective, we must understand that how that message is relevant to a particular stakeholder and at a particular time. We must learn what is the significance of heritage in a value chain of a ferry company or a restaurant or a city administration. In the end, our management plan focused quite a bit to Faro-related priorities. I highlighted them here in red frames. It was, to me at least, surprising how strongly the workshops concentrated on the Suomenlinna as a Helsinki city district point. It actually should not have been surprising. After all, in the statement of the outstanding universal value of Suomenlinna, it says, "Today, Suomenlinna is one of the most popular tourist attractions in Finland and constitutes a district of Helsinki." But somehow, as a historian, I tended to look further into the past. The significance of Suomenlinna's city district self-image refers obviously to the community of Suomenlinna, its residents and stakeholders, and its importance has been communicated to the city administration at every possible point. The cooperation between the site manager and the city administration has been good, and the city has so far understood the special circumstances that this small maritime community has as regards to, for example, traffic, school, or kindergarten. At the moment, we are revising the management plan, but now we do not have the resource of a dedicated project manager anymore. That means that we have to trust the original idea that we had, that this is a project that must turn into a process. The management of World Heritage Site Network is all about constant communication and message discipline. Like I said at the beginning, the management plan does not have any legal power. It is a common commitment. And as such, the network meetings I mentioned are needed to reinforce the shared idea of a community that is more than just investment euros and ferry timetables. I will now give you a few examples of how Suomenlinna cultural heritage brings people shared experiences that are rooted in the outstanding universal value of the site. First, Linna Bar. Linna Bar is a Suomenlinna community facility and a local bar. The owners, who are all local residents, have a very reasonable lease with the governing body, and they provide Suomenlinna with live music gigs, book club meetings, and bingo nights. And everyone is welcome. If you hail from the mainland, they don't hold it against you. Their business case includes a desire to show everyone what it feels like to live in Suomenlinna. World Heritage Volunteers is a UNESCO initiative to give young people chance to work for World Heritage. Our landscape specialists and gardeners include in their annual plans 2 weeks of meaningful tasks for a group of 12 to 15 volunteers every year. All kinds of volunteer groups are welcome, but the World Heritage Volunteers is the flagship in our efforts to let people get their hands dirty for World Heritage. Suomenlinna Visitor Center at the ferry pier used to be known as Tourist Information. In the spirit of Faro, the head of the visitor center wanted to reorient the work from unidirectional information giving to inspiration and interactive communication. This is very much a work in process still, and it also involves improved signage and use of digital technology to free up our staff's time to concentrate on the communication of the values and attributes of the site instead of just walking distances and ferry timetables. Very importantly, networks need schedules. Multi-actor environments like Suomenlinna must have regular target-oriented meetings that further projects at hand, but also reinforce the site's DNA. The feedback from, for example, our last stakeholder day showed that the participants wanted more time to systematically work together, Nice summer weather, coffee and pastries were fine, but we underestimated our partners' commitment to work for cultural heritage, and we will learn from that, and we will workshop them even harder the next time. And lastly, one of the oldest partnerships in Suomenlinna is the cooperation between the governing body and the Suomenlinna prison. This is an important resource for the site and an opportunity for the prisoners to gain meaningful work experience. We hope that despite the current financial difficulties, there will remain a chance for cultural heritage to work to enrich prisoners' rehabilitation also in the future. To conclude, the Faro Convention was an inspiration for us in the 2010s when we reworked our management plan. It complemented the points of emphasis that the new UNESCO guidelines and toolkits had. The need to actively move to a relationship that engages and inspires the citizens and communities has not gone anywhere in the 2020s. There is still much work to be done to give voice to new communities that previously haven't seen heritage as worth their while or have felt neglected in the discussions. There are also traditional communities whose further empowering would open even newer perspectives. I have talked about communication, commitment, and reaching out of the heritage professionals' bubble. And this has been important in this process. And upholding the process of participation is the key. I don't have any delusions that our stakeholders have the management plan PDF with them every time I meet them, but hopefully they remember that they are included every year, many times a year, and that their voice is met with respect, that they can feel ownership of Suomenlinna. That is the key. And I would like to end by quoting James Rebanks, who said that the best defense of natural or cultural heritage is through a progressive vision of how it can make people's lives better. Thank you.
And thank you for the possibility. I'm sharing some of the collaborative examples of cultural heritage work that we have conducted at the Helena Rautavaara Museum. Couple of words about the museum in the beginning. Journalist Helena Rautavaara acquired the collection during her travels in various countries in Middle East, Asia, Latin America and Africa between 1957 and 1997. The museum is run by a private foundation, and we have representatives from the city of Espoo, from the University of Helsinki, from the Anthropological Association and from the Finnish Museum Association. The mission of the museum is to bring people together and strengthen cultural dialogue and understanding. Together with our partners, we aim to build culturally diverse Finland and world. Our values include openness, care and responsibility. The museum has located several times, and at the moment we are located in Espoon Keskus in a shopping mall. And the area is one of the most diverse parts of the capital area, with inhabitants every sixth has their mother tongue, something else as Finnish or Swedish. Also, the income in the area is lower than in other parts of Espoo, and also there are more people who are living alone. And it's very important that we have free access to the museum, and all our activities are also for free. We are very committed to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. which aims to eradicate the extreme poverty, taking into the account the environment, economy, and the human being on equal footing. And cultural and social sustainability are particularly important for us. Appreciation of cultural diversity, as well as everyone's right to participate and live a good life. Couple of projects that we are working at the moment. Activists of Our Own Lives is a global education project to raise awareness on social sustainability and encourage young people to act for change. And we cooperate together with the Finnish NGO and the NGO in Kenya, Nairobi. The project includes a collaborative exhibition and virtual reality projects, and we have produced them together with the young people living in the streets of Nairobi. And the project, it carries the message of hope, and it is that change is possible and together we can make it. The young people, the key persons in the exhibition, they used to be inmates, sex workers, drug addicts, but they have transformed their lives. Nowadays they are mothers, fathers, taxi drivers, vegetable senders. And in the exhibition they are reaching out for their age mates and also for the museum audience here in Finland with the words of empathy and solace. Another project that we are just about to start is a knowledge production workshop. We are inviting families with African descent to the museum. We are interested in testing and developing community-based and decolonial ways of producing, communicating, and addressing information related to cultural heritage materials. Now I would like to share with you 3 examples of the collaborative approach. As a museum, we support and facilitate the cultural heritage work of various diaspora communities and showcase the multiplicity of cultural heritage and diverse narratives heritage conveys. Our approach is human-centered, I would say human rights-centered. Everyone has right to culture. The first example was a co-creation process with the Sufi fraternity in Helsinki, Window to Senegal. The goals for the community, they wanted to portray the cultural heritage and religious life in Senegal in our collection exhibition. And we, as a museum, we wanted to open the collection for new interpretation, decolonize the museum, and the outputs were a new section in the collection exhibition, video production, and also a small visual repatriation. 90% of Senegal's current population are Muslim. Arab traders brought Islam to Senegal in the 12th century. In the late 19th century, Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba founded the Murid fraternity, which belongs to the Sufi branch of Islam. Sheikh Ibra Fall, a student of Ahmadou Bamba, founded the Bayefal fraternity. The Murids they place particular emphasis on peaceful coexistence of Islam and Christianity and of hard work. The Bayefal fraternity was very important for the museum founder. She was actually a member of it, and she was traveling in between Finland and Senegal various times in the 1980s. The co-creation and archive process here in 4 photos. So the members of the fraternity, they selected the items from the museum collection to be presented in the exhibition, provided them new meanings and also new narratives. In connection with jointly conducted archive study, many phases of Rautavaara's old photos, they were identified, and a small visual repatriation was done by sending back photos to Senegal to the people that Helena Rautavaara had taken the photos of, or their relatives. That was possible because in the group there were some acquaintances of Helena Rautavaara. In the opening of the museum, in the new premises in the shopping hall, the fraternity, they organized a traditional ceremony in the museum space as a surprise us. Later they told that they were praying that we don't no more need to move. And then they were also gathering some money so that the next time when we invite them, we can have more better coffee, because they thought that that wasn't so what we were offering. And here are some photos from the ready-made display case. It includes the stories of Prophet Sheikh Amadou Bamba and the Prophet Sheikh Ibra Fall. You can see some paintings from Rautavaara's Suver glass painting collection. And the showcase also features Helena's Bayefall patchwork outfit and some traditional instruments such as kora. The community donated us a ksasida, a sacred book, and also the traditional men's costume, as they were considered important objects that we should display. The community appreciated their window to Senegal. We are on a yearly basis invited to their ceremonies, and the museum in turn, we invite them to give guided tours, lectures, and some concerts in the museum space. Another example was a collaborative virtual reality production, Durga Puja. And that was with the Bengal community in the capital area. And Espoo is the city in Finland where there are most Indian citizens living in diaspora live. So, of course, we were very keen to work with them. So, for the community, the goals, they wanted to show cultural heritage to the second generation with new technology. And we, as a museum, we were very interested in increasing understanding between cultures in a globalized world. The output was 360-degree video and a 3D model of the Durga Puja idol. Durga Puja is one of the biggest annual religious festivals in India. It is particularly celebrated in the state of Bengal, that is in the eastern part of India. During the festival, statues and images of goddess Durga are venerated in many ways. Families visit temple and children, they receive gifts. The Bengali community in Helsinki and Espoo, they donated an altar to the museum after they stopped using it, and the year was 2012. In India, old statues of gods and their altars are traditionally embedded in water after they have been used. Traditionally, the altars are also made of clay, but nowadays light, portable altars are produced to meet the needs of Indian citizens in diaspora. The Indian citizens living in Helsinki and Espoo region, they have been celebrating this festival since 1999. Annual festivals are very important elements in keeping the cultural heritage alive in diaspora. In 1916, we had young anthropologists working with us who were familiar with Indian cultural heritage and also very interested in the new technology. So a joint plan was made to produce a virtual reality experience on annual festival. The funding was approved and the work started. The collaborative production process, it included lots of meetings, interviews, online questionnaires, script writing, filming, 360-degree video, post-production editing, comments in texting, and the final production was a 360-degree video which shows the important rituals but also conveys the general feeling of the fest. Feedback from the Bengali community indicated that the cooperation was valuable and meaningful. The production was described as a genuine collaborative project. The VR production process clearly demonstrated the Bengali community's appreciation of the importance of passing on the tradition through technology. For us, as a museum, framing the representation of the festival from the perspective of the community was very valuable, as well as the fact that the cooperation provided multiple ways of participation. The cooperation is still continuing. We are now getting ready for the second altar donation, and actually it's the same altar that was in the virtual reality experience, so we are really looking forward to it and what we will do with it in the future. And then these were like a longer processes, and then smaller and a shorter collaboration. At home and abroad was a collaborative co-creation of temporary exhibition with refugees and asylum seekers who had arrived from Syria, Iraq and Afghanistan, and we invited them to study Helena Rautavaara's photos, old black and photos from the same region. The goals were memory work, knowledge sharing, healing, showing museum audiences glimpses of history, cultural heritage and everyday life in war-torn countries. And compared to the other projects, this was quite short. So on her way to India in 1955 and 57, Helena Rautavaara spent time in Syria, Iraq and Afghanistan. She socialized with fashionable dressed students in Homs, visited tourist places in Damascus and Aleppo, toured the ruined city of Palmyra and lived with local families in Baghdad. In Afghanistan, Rautavaara traveled to the Khyber Pass. Wars have ravaged the countries where Rautavaara visited. Many places have now been destroyed. So we wanted to invite people to study the old photos and share the memories and create new stories aligned with them. The participants told us that it was very emotional to go through the old photos, memorize the places long gone, and also create the new stories. They enjoyed the respectful encounters with the museum staff, who then delivered the memories further to an exhibition. So, and there are a couple of photos from the process. And what have we learned? During the collaborative heritage projects, we have realized how deeply rooted the colonial mindset is in us, cultural heritage workers. We have learned that it's very difficult to give up the old habits, the right to select, the right to define, the right to choose the narratives we tell. The process of unlearning takes the whole lifetime. But we have also learned that cultural heritage can be a powerful tool to foster dialogue and inclusion, as well as support human connection, resilience and solidarity. It can help us to understand the complex interdependencies and ways of being and living in a shared world to build more sustainable futures together. Thank you.
Hello, hey, I'm Kristi from Tallinn, from Kalamaja Museum. And Kalamaja Museum is the part of Tallinn City Museum. And I'm telling about the Kalamaja Museum a little bit more. Kalamaja Museum is created with and for the community, and it represents not only creating the museum, but also our today. Power is handed over to local people. Kalamaja district is one of the oldest in this Tallinn capital city, and it is situated near the sea. And Kalamaja means fish village, literally. So nice words. This name, fish village or fish house, is coming from the medieval times when fishermen were living there. Here you can see now our museum house. This house is not characteristic to Kalamaja. We have quite a lot of wooden houses near us. But this villa was built in 1930s, and in Soviet times, in this little house, were living 7 families in different floors. And in 1985, Moscow said that Tallinn has to have a communist Mikhail Kalinin museum. And this Kalinin museum, the communist museum, was there a few years because the Mikhail Kalinin was living in Kalamaja, in northern Tallinn. But then Estonia gained independence, and this house, there was a gallery and many years children museum. And now the new life has begun. Now 3 years, we have birthday next week, 3 years of Kalamaja's Community Museum. And we are the European's best community museum. Thank you. We had the EMEA award for community and engagement. And here you can see our very proud community members with the prize, holding the prize. We have lots of more of these pictures, but they are very proud that they have done the European's best museum. They are just ordinary people living in Kalamaja. But when we started 2018, we didn't saw it coming. Why? Because there was a lack of money, lack of staff, corona, etc. And we are under the Tallinn city, and Tallinn city government asked us then 6 years from now, Kristi, why you are asking people how to do the museum? Don't you know how to do it yourself? Why? Why to ask people? It was very new back then in Estonia to engage people to creating something in the museum especially, or creating the museum. But today we are here. Everything's changed. Now is community here, community there. And we are the Europeans' best. But when we started, we were outsiders. And how we get the community museum done? Firstly, we asked local community days to local people, do you want a museum? Do you even want? We don't have to do it if you don't want it. Which museum do you like? And they said through surveys that they wanted to have a museum where they can hear stories about yesterday, today, tomorrow, their meeting place. They wanted to have a kitchen there. They wanted to have something for the children there. And they wanted to have a local like a history exposition, not only the museum, but outside also from this, on the streets then. And then they like to have the museum, and we did quite a lot of interviews, group interviews, brainstorming session, creative research methods we used, and then all the knowledge that which kind of museum locals want. The the knowledge were coming from the people to us. We asked, and we are asking till today these questions. And we did quite a lot of interviews with the local people, with the local firms, with I don't know, libraries, schools, everybody in Kalamaja, I think. And now here you can see we are in a very nice place, in a local bakery, of course. And we even, this was quite a new museum. We didn't have anything, we didn't have visual for the museum. And we wanted to engage in every level the local people. And with one of our partners, we did people can choose their own museum visuals. And you can see here the voting process front of our house, but the voting process was also in the Instagram, Facebook, we have email lists in everywhere in our community. And the variants, the logo variants was D, which they can choose, D variant, very Nordic, like a hipster variant. C is a natural history museum. B variant is from the children's collaboration, like hanging something, some fishes there. And local people choose A variant, and it's the fish eye. We are a fish house, fish village, and Kalamaja's visual identity is Kalamaja Museum's visual identity is Kalamaja's words, Kalamaja Museum through a fish eye perspective, and people did like it the most. It's most characteristic to Kalamaja. They thought, did our museum workers like it? No. But the people did choose that, so it was our visual, and it is till today, our visual identity. It was quite a crazy process. The other museums watched us. What you are doing? You're asking people your visual identity. It's crazy. In Estonia, we didn't have this process before us. It was a little bit crazy process. And we engaged people in every level, also little people, children. We asked them to draw, to write about Kalamaja, craft about Kalamaja, and we had exhibition also in Kalamaja with their works. And now we are using their drawings in our souvenirs and in our play area in the museum. Of course, our community members are our colleagues. They are coming every week. They're doing something. We're thinking a very good relationship with them. Here you can see Bianca and two ladies from. They are helped museum a lot because they have quite the oldest house in Kalamaja, and they had treasures in there. And what people told us that they want to see their own stories in the museum and their own stuff also with the stories. Their own things with the stories, what are important to them. And we collected all over Kalamaja what you can see in museum today. 80% of our exhibition is donated by the local people with their stories. And we also gathered photos from their photo albums. We scanned them and handed over to them back, because then the knowledge is in the families and in the museums too. And they asked us to come to their homes, to their basements, to their attics, even rooftops. 3 years before we opened the museum, we didn't have a place to work. So we worked on the streets, literally, in their people's homes, in their basements. We collected. It was quite crazy process. We didn't know where our day ends. So one day it was ended in the rooftop. And we didn't have the museum ready yet, so we did quite a lot of our outside exhibitions in the streets, showing every kind of pictures from the Kalamaja's history, from today, from past, and they're like donated pictures. People donated pictures and their stories, and we put them quite quickly up to the streets. Of course, we ask their permission. They read all the texts and the photo linings also. It was very important that they saw their own stories hanging before front of their houses. And this exhibition is up till today. And we listened to the community, what they want. One family wanted to have their house history inside their corridor, not outside the house, but inside the corridor. And it's one of the nicest apartment house in Kalamaja, and they have their own exhibition about their house history in their corridor, collaboration with this house. We did quite a lot of extraordinary events. We gathered Kalamaja's people's ears. Sounds very crazy, but the idea came also from the interviews, because Kalamajas have a lot of wooden houses, and we can hear everything that neighbor says, even whispering. So it was from one of the interviews, and then we asked a local artist, Flo Kasaru, to take a plaster ear, ears from people. We have had free ear gathering nights, and then we had exhibition in the museum just before the museum went to the under construction. It was 12 hours exhibition. Now you can see, if you are coming to the Kalamaja's museum, you can see also the ears to welcome you on the door. It was very crazy thing to do. And we have quite a lot of collaboration with families, I don't know, everybody with a public advent calendar. You can take there something from there. In this December, one of the local lady did the gingerbread seeds, and you did open one of the door, and everybody can take a little gingerbread seeds to eat. There was quite a lot of nice things back there, and stories that people donated us, and everything like that. And we have this calendar up in this December too. Locals are our partners. They are doing quite a lot of tours. Here you can see a lady who is doing Kalamaja's rat tour, telling about local rats. Why not? Because it's the interest of this lady, and everybody wanted to hear also about Kalamaja's rat's life. And the other man you can see here is Andres. Andres' interest is manhole covers. Do you know what they are? Of course. You can see the manhole covers there too. Because Andres is telling us, the manhole covers are so interesting. And we ask, Andres, please do the tour in Kalamaja and tell the stories about these manhole covers. And today, Andres has a book about Tallinn's and Kalamaja's manhole covers. Voila! What is people's interest? This is our interest. They are coming to us, through museum, to go with their interest. And people are coming to listen. We have cooking nights where local people are coming to cook something. We are cooking together, older recipes, newer recipes. We have in Kalamaja living Kalamaja's Brazilians are having this, or now we have Kalamaja's Mexican night also. The newer community are also coming to us. One of the last projects what we have done is a phone booth. It's Estonians smallest museum, and it's open 24/7. It's in the street. You can go inside a phone booth and take a number and hear the local people's stories. Everything recorded there is local people telling the stories there. It's very popular. And we have done quite a lot of art projects with the people of the area, and this is one of the last ones. It was a very ugly house, and people wanted to have this renewed, and this owner also wanted to have this something nice there. And we did with the local community a fish making nights. They did make the little fishes there, and artists chose Kalamaja's older houses and painted there the houses. It's like a cooperative project with the artist and the local people. Nii, onko nyt se it's over now. Thank you, kiitos. This is we would like to have in every museum, especially in community museum, this kinds of feeling, to feel you are welcome, your ideas are welcome in the museum, we are welcoming you in the museum, that this is the feeling of, I hope, our museum, and it will be our museum. But now I have one video also. Can we have time to? It's a 3 minutes video. Can we? Mm-hmm.
Kalamaja Museum is located in Tallinn, Estonia, in one of the oldest suburbs of Tallinn. Since the very first moment, the Kalamaja Community Museum has been a joint project with the people of the area. Such method of creating a museum is unique in Estonia. The process started in the spring of 2018 with a survey conducted among locals, which revealed that people are interested in hearing stories about the past, the present and the future, and they would like a nice place where the community could meet. This was followed by brainstorming, meetings and interviews with both former and current residents of Kalamaja. These laid the basis for the concept and the permanent exhibition of the museum. Tens of former and current residents of Kalamaja have participated in the setting up of the exhibition by donating items and sharing their memories of life in Kalamaja. Close collaboration with the community continues on a daily basis through different events, exhibitions and activities. For example, everyone is welcome to join cooking events and tours of the area led by locals, and the former and current residents are also involved in the creation of different exhibitions, both inside the museum building and around Kalamaja. Community is at the heart of everything we do.
Thank you.
Dear all, as Leena told, my name is Riina Koivisto and I come from Finnish Local Heritage Federation, and here is also Jonina Vahtolammi from our federation, and our executive manager Teppo was also here, and maybe he's soon coming back. So the Finnish Local Heritage Federation is the central organizing body for local heritage work in Finland. And I'll tell you about masters and apprentices. It's template, which it is a way to local and cultural heritage work in a simple way. It brings children, young people, and the elderly together. And this Masters and Apprentices template won the Europa Nostra Award or European Heritage Award 2 years ago, and we are still very proud of it. And what is special in this model is that all participants, young and older alike, are both masters and apprentices, and we know that they all have some valuable skills and knowledge to share. And in this model, everyone is involved in the planning of activities and creation of contents. But the most important thing is that everybody in the group can learn from each other. Every group plan their activities by themselves, and things to learn can be local knowledge or history, and it can be skills. For example, how to fix an old house, or handicrafts. For instance, how to knit traditional Finnish wool socks, or things like how to grow vegetables, or get to know your local foods, how to feast, how to bake, traditional pastries, the things to learn together. It can be just about anything. Usually elderly share their knowledge about old times, and so traditional techniques. Young people can also share their local knowledge, but also help with digital devices. It is also learning to notice how people of different ages think about and how they do different things. We have noticed that this way of learning has reduced prejudices. Then why this model? The activities have shown that different generations have a lot to offer each other, and it's important for children and young people to have access to their own home corners and cultural heritage that is important to them. And knowing and understanding cultural heritage can be used to grow roots and build identity. People of all ages have found that the activities have improved their quality of life, and we have found that many people, as well young and elderly, can be very lonely, and interaction has reduced loneliness and rootlessness. Then who can participate or found and set up a group? So anybody. In Finland, for example, local heritage and neighborhood associations, local museums, city museums, municipalities and third sector actors, they implement these activities. We have in Finnish Local Heritage Federation coordinated this project since 2018. And it has been a pleasure to realize that in the field, this project has been met with enthusiasm, and all in all, hundreds of children and senior citizens have participated. And by the way, in this photo you see some bananas and other meals. We highly recommend that people to eat together and make some coffee and tea and put something in their mouths, because people are nicer to each other and they learn better when they don't have to be hungry. Then something about results, especially among young people, their understanding of their home region and its traditions and history grew, and their identity was strengthened. The elderly learned about young people's interests and ways of seeing the world, and the digital equipments were used. The project's goal to enable people of different ages and to learn from each other, it was met very well. And we realized that cooperating in many ways and levels is needed. And also, this is a very good model of creating safe relationship networks and understanding between immigrants and local community. Here are some photos of it. And the model is easy to disseminate everywhere, and it's adaptable to various cultures, contexts, and traditions. We want to encourage people of all ages to familiarize themselves with their home region and its tangible and intangible heritage. And this model has many possibilities, but in the future, we would like to try to get different generations to cooperate with sustainable development and do something concrete to their environment and some environmental acts together. So, thank you.
So yes, I'm executive director at the moment. In the photo, the lady on the left side of me is actually our permanent executive director, but she's now home with having a little baby a year ago, and she's maybe coming back next year. And on the right side of me, you see I have a little bit complex with the right and left, is Kati, who has been project manager in all our international projects. So we've had like Creative Europe projects and also Erasmus Plus projects, and she's at the moment in Italy eating pasta and being happy. And I'm with you here. I'm happy also, but yes. So she's at the moment working as a part-time and full-time special education teacher. And then Tuuli, who is the most left, is her project ended now in August, and it's actually also some kind of success story, because she came to work with us when she was just a student and did the master's thesis about our history club kind of the projects, and then year after year we started to get a little bit more money for that, and last year she was 100% worker, and then she got a full-time job from the city of Nokia, and now she's doing the same things. So sometimes in even this area there are good career kind of stories. Nowadays I think I hear only the bad ones. It's a sad situation, but it's not what I'm talking about today. And I'm very aware also that I don't want to shame the Finnish punctuality, so I have to get going now faster. We are at the moment having, like I said, one Erasmus Plus project, and then we are having 4 national projects. Actually, one of them is more like a local project, and this is pretty much our normal situation. So like 50% of our finances are coming from the projects, about 40% is coming from the government, mostly from the Ministry of Culture and Education, and then some little money when we are educating and selling our workshops and such. We do a lot of teacher training, and this is a wide perspective, so there is kindergarten teachers and the teachers who are only working with the adults. We are producing learning materials, and this we did with Leena. So if you haven't tried this yet, this is the Spinner of Living Heritage. Please talk either for me or Leena, and we are doing a demo with you. And Leena was yesterday informing me that 20th language version came out, so from the yesterday on we have also Arabic version, because teachers have been really asking to have this. So this is a tool for how to make it easier to talk about cultural heritage with the kids and the students, but what I've learned, adults like it quite much as well. Yes, now we go forward. Every time I go to meet teachers, kids, students, pupils, I always ask, what is important cultural heritage for you? And this is our main theme also, our projects. We are not going there to tell what is important cultural heritage. They are choosing it themselves. They are finding the meaning themselves. And now I am, if I'm lucky, showing you a video. And actually it's for you Estonian guys. It's from Tallinn. From one of the projects we did this question, what is important cultural heritage for you? And the project was in Finland, Estonia, Sweden, Norway. And I especially liked this one from Estonia a lot. And I think you will too. So. Very promising so far.
Hello, dear viewers. Good evening. My name is Vincent Tasser, and this is my colleague for this project and friend, Henri Balgi. We shall talk about the battery prison, or the battery prison.
Yes, indeed. So, let's firstly talk about what did we know before we visited it.
So, I knew that it had been a military fortress for the Russian Empire to defend St. Petersburg from the naval approaches. Now, I didn't know that it was built in 1829, over the course of 11 years, finished in 1840. And it was already technologically outdated. So it turned to barracks for the Russian soldiers. And after the independence of the Republic, it became a prison. And you may continue on.
Yes, so I didn't know pretty much absolutely nothing about the prison before, I didn't know anything besides the fact that it had been only a prison. And I did learn quite a few things. So over the course that the building has worked as a prison, it has held over 150,000 prisoners in total. And one of the highest number of people in there was 4,000. Wasn't that during the time of the barracks, when it was a barracks?
Yeah, I think it was during the repressions.
Okay. But anyways, it has been quite a filled building. During the excursion we saw beds where there were sheets with people on them, which just showed how little space everybody had. And they had to sleep in changes, in shifts. So like when you had slept maybe say 4 hours, you had to change it with somebody who was just standing somewhere. And that was quite an interesting fact. Then we visited the execution room, learned some things about it. You weren't specifically told that you would be executed. You were just told, please go to this room. And then behind the door, a gun was put to your head, and the rest was known.
Now, this building doesn't have that much cultural value to Estonia. It is a symbol of tyranny and repression of the Soviet government under Stalin, and to a much lesser extent under the other rulers. And for me, it's also like a big old-fashioned building not too far away from my home, which makes it somewhat special to me.
Yeah, I guess the architecture of it is a bit different. You know, it's like pizza shaped when you look at it from above. It's like a quarter, a little bit tinier, but still. So anyways, yes, the cultural value, I also do think it's not that big of a matter, because it is a symbol of communism in my opinion. But still, it is history, and after all, if you don't remember the history, you live without the future.
Never forget, they say.
Yes.
Never forget.
Thank you for watching.
So the boys took like not the easiest road, as you can see with it, and they really went to with the difficult history, and what I understood, the teacher wasn't too happy about the choice they made, but they made it through really well. And now when we are in Suomenlinna, there's a difficult history here as well, and this has also always been a prison, and maybe the darkest time was a little bit over 100 years ago when we had our civil war here. So this always comes to my mind. So now I'm going to tell you very shortly about the few projects we'd had recent years. Heritage Hubs was also the one that we won the Europe Nostra prize a few years ago, and the idea was there that there's pupils chosen from the participating countries, which was Finland, Spain and Serbia, and they could choose some for them important cultural heritage and share it with the other schools. So there was, for example, Finnish school and Serbian school. And the Finnish students decided some heritage, and they made a video of it and informed how this heritage should be done. And then the information is sent to Serbia, and they are doing their version of it. And also the Finnish students went there to see how their heritage is kind of like interpreted. And there we wanted to kind of have the feeling that first you choose, and then you kind of explain, and then you also get the feeling how others are understanding it, and how they can take part of that heritage. And mostly all went really well, but of course there's always little kind of problems or kind of the moments that all is not such happy thing, like for example, the Finnish pupils had chosen maybe not so nice heritage, like our pupils had chosen something to do with sports or baking cinnamon rolls, which you had just 30 minutes ago. But for somehow the Serbian and Spanish students were very high quality heritage, so there was a poet who had lived like 400 years ago, and these kind of, so they were a little bit different, and the Spanish and Serbian pupils were wondering, like, is this really a heritage, like the playing floorball or running or like even sauna? Well, this is kind of learning experience, so that's good, but there was a Serbian poet whose the painting that when he had died was a painting about him, and the Spanish pupils were inspired to do that moment, which is in the painting again, and so that was how they wanted to play that heritage. And some of the Spanish, I'm not saying the pupils, but the teachers thought that it was a bit brutal way, and they weren't appreciating. But anyway, this was kind of like a moment for discussion, how you can like understand the heritage of others and how it feels when your heritage is getting a new form. So anyway, the learning was happening strongly. I'm also having a short video of this, and I'm hoping I'm not doing overtime because of the videos, but the pupils' voices are so important, so I don't actually care if it goes.
Culture is very important. That's important for young people and older people, and it's nice to share. Is it music, dancing, playing together? That brings people together.
Heritage Hubs was a transnational project where children and young people from Finland, Serbia and Spain learned about and from cultural heritage. It was also about them choosing what cultural heritage they regard as important.
It was important that we could choose it ourselves.
A lo largo de todo el curso vimos trabajar a nuestros alumnos con enorme interés e ilusión en el patrimonio que ellos habían elegido.
They shared and interpreted cultural heritage to gain a wider understanding of cultural diversity.
U projektu je najbolje bila baš ta razmena kulturnog nasljeđa, da se sagleda šta nam je u stvari zajedničko.
När Serbia-eleverna presenterade stafettkarnevalen så det kändes jätteroligt för att när någon annan presenterar vår kultur och det kändes jättebra.
Participating in a project that has helped us to get to know our culture and our heritage more has been very enriching for us. And I think it's a way that we can all connect as a whole country, as a whole continent.
Los niños sacaron el proyecto de la escuela y durante unos días sus familias, sus vecinos, sus amigos, los grupos de danza se convirtieron en sus profesores y de forma espontánea toda la comunidad local se involucró en el proyecto porque sentían que era algo que hablaba de ellos y de su identidad.
So in a way, cultural heritage became a new link between the pupils, teachers, parents and the wider community.
Key findings of the research that we based on the Heritage Hub's experiences are that heritage education is a social learning process in essence. This means that learning from heritage is particularly effective when it is active, when it happens in direct social encounters and in immediate cultural environment.
It's easier to learn by going to places and everything than writing on paper.
It's amazing how they learn from each other.
Learn about themselves, learn about their own country when they're learning about the others.
One of the overwhelming outcomes is how the notion of heritage changed and expanded in children's minds.
Sve što vama znači, to može da bude neko kulturno nasljeđe.
A ne!
What is the time? Is Lena yet worried? No. Good. So other project we had like last year, 2023, we weren't leading that. That was led by the Croatian team, and the idea was creative placemaking. So in every country, meaning Croatia, Cyprus and Finland, the kids chose a place they wanted to change. And we chose, I'm living in Tampere, so I chose actually a class that it's a bit different. It's a class, we call it Valmistava luokka, so it's a class where they are taking all the young people that have recently moved to Finland but don't speak Finnish yet. So in that year it was mostly Ukrainians and some other nations as well, and they were, the classroom wasn't really in the nice, beautiful building. We are very proud of the Finnish school system, but not all our school buildings are very beautiful. And we did all kinds of workshops with them, and there is the photos here, that they were taking photos that something they like in the schoolyard, and they were also taking photos what they don't like. Then they made dream maps that what could be the change that they would want to see in the schoolyard. And now yes, the text is coming. So you can see what they didn't like was the stairs, and it's really ugly, and it's also the stairs they had to use every time they went outside, and they were seeing it from the windows of the classroom. And from the dream maps, we saw a lot of like colors and flowers. Also, the boys had chosen. This has been asked me many times: did the boys really do the flowers? But it's maybe Finnish boys would have not. But the Ukrainians are much like a wider perspective on the beauty. So I'm convinced that they also like the flowers. And when you are kind of wanting the students and kids to participate, you can't really make everybody to draw, so they could participate in other ways. For example, the boy you see on the top photo said that he isn't able to paint, that he is bad in painting and drawing, so he was doing just the blue walls and we didn't make, but in the end he actually was doing a little bit. So, but it's important that it's not going to be a negative or you are pushing somebody to, you can participate in so many ways. And this is the result. So we were really happy, and we had a little party for the murals. And this mural is still in Tampere to be seen. I sometimes walk and go to see if it's fine, but sadly the Cyprus Day changed schoolyard as well, and it had been ruined in first night. There is gates surrounding the schoolyards in Cyprus, but for somehow it had annoyed that there had been nice things. And also in Croatia, they were taking part of the street and making there more like benches and flowers, and they had been stolen, the benches from there. So we were kind of the only one lucky that this kind of the change actually stayed. But this is also to kind of was a learning experience that we were a lot in the end talking about that who owns the schoolyard and why there are gates in certain schoolyards, and in Finland every place is basically open and usually safe most of the time. Another project we had actually in Leenas, under the Leenas, so it was the Living project, and we had the workshops in 3 cities in Finland where we put together older people and younger people. And this is from Jyväskylä, where we actually put together older people and the similar like immigrant kids who had been just recently moved to Finland. So the older people usually didn't speak English or other languages than Finnish, and the younger people didn't speak usually Finnish. So the communication, let's say, it wasn't very smooth, but it got better during the day. And in the end, one of the seniors asked that the whole class would come to his summer cottage in the summer, and they would go to sauna and swimming and fishing. And so it was like a American movie ending in the end, and the idea was we first did this, of course. We had also that the older people had brought items from home, some things that have a meaning for them, and many of them had actually surprisingly Karelian background, so either them or their parents had been evacuated from which is now a Russian area. So they were telling the memories of the times their family had experienced refugee times. So it was kind of touching, and the young people were really carefully listening. They had their teacher was translating to them the stories. This would be maybe anyway one of the most important things I would like to share. We don't really have time for go to kind of group talks, but when we are talking about the participatory, what it is, who defines? Now we today have seen many examples that volunteers or the local citizens or anybody can be defining what cultural heritage is. So we have passed this moment. This is nothing new anymore. But who is we when we are discussing about our cultural heritage? This I have learned strongly recent years when I've been going a lot to talking to universities or for the groups that there are people different backgrounds. And I'm trying to kind of like not say that Finnish culture heritage is this or our culture heritage, because it's so many things. And always when I say that sauna is like everybody in Finland loves sauna, it's not true. We in Finland know it's not true, but we don't tell it to foreigners, of course. We are presenting the world as sauna crazy people, but not every Finn goes to sauna anyway. So always should be kind of like sensitive for what you are saying that is nation's cultural heritage. Is it participation if you have to participate? And this is when the teacher has said that yes, my class can participate, but not all the kids are maybe interested, so they have to. And how do we make it anyway positive experience for them? Is it safe to participate in? You can imagine that certain groups, also when you work with the volunteers, or when you do a nationwide big project like this was told in the morning, that there was like workshops around Finland, adults participating. Is it safe to say your opinion there? What are the other ones talking about you behind your back if you say this opinion? So how to create so safe place that everybody can participate? And this is what I hear often from the younger people, that participation is just nice behavior. So those who are knowing how to say their opinion in the school or in the class, that their participation is better than those who are not saying it nice way or pleasing way. And we should take all kinds of opinions anyway to notice them. What happens when the result of the participation is not what was wanted? That happens. It had happened in Tallinn in that great Kalamaja museum, and we've had also experiences. One of my favorite memories is when we were doing in Rauma, our history club. Pupils museum was giving them a task that you do this mobile road, taking photos around old Rauma, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and you pick the favorite spots, and then you do it in the mobile app, the information about why you chose this. So when the mobile app was ready, it was all the pizza places, McDonald's, kebab places, and they were important, and they were all located in the old Rauma. They had done what was asked, but it wasn't what the museum was probably hoping. But so maybe, I don't know if the museum is so much advertising that mobile app. And how does the participation actually affect at the end? Like, did you get heard? Do you see your voice in the results? This is also important, that there would be kind of all kinds of opinions gathered there. Now I'm jumping. Yes, thank you.
Hello, so my name is Laura Linat, as Lena told, and I'm here in 2 roles. I work in an Estonian Folklore Council as a development manager, but at the same time I'm the bearer of the mumming tradition, so I belong to the mumming community in Estonia. And when I'm telling about the mumming traditions in Estonia, I'm going to mainly tell you how we are trying to empower the mumming community and actually make people to notice themselves as part of the mumming community. So before I'm heading there are maybe some facts you should know. Throughout the history, we have had 15 folk calendar events that have involved mumming, masks and dressing up, and today there are only 3 to 4 left. And out of those, St. Martin's Day and St. Catherine's Day mummers are the ones that are known all over Estonia. Mumming, the St. Martin's Day and St. Catherine's Day are celebrated in November, so it's a period of spirits and the beginning of winter. And mummers were once considered as spirits of our ancestors. Even though this knowledge of this belief has faded, there are still marks that show it. And the idea of mummers is to bring luck, health and wealth. So what the mummers do, they dress up as different characters. They are going from door to door. There are certain repertoire that they are performing. Definitely it involves at least one runo song, and also dances, instrumental music, riddles, proverbs, improvisation and tradition. And what is important to mention is that mumming is a two-way tradition, meaning that it doesn't involve only the mummers, but also the hosting family. So what makes a community? When we are talking about mummers, we can't just see one single criteria, because there are different mumming communities in villages, in parishes, in city districts, and all those are different. Each year, the mumming groups, the families that are formed, can be newly formed or can be the old groups that have already existed. And the mummers and hosts usually they usually form of friends and families. What mumming gives a community, it gives also a community feeling to those who are living next door to each other, but not communicating with each other in any other time. So when we are saying that St. Martin's Day and St. Catherine's Day mummers are known all over Estonia, can we also say then that the whole country forms one community, or are there different communities inside one bigger one? Can a community include people who have never thought they belonged to it? This is what we have asked ourselves. And I like to say that most of Estonians probably have gone around as mummers or have visited mummers. So can an experience that you have experienced years ago still let you enter to the community today? So those were some of the questions that raised, and also what we did see is that the knowledge of people about mumming had become very superficial, and the carrying of this tradition had been mainly passed from grown-ups to children. So in 2018, we created a call to action, let's get mumming. In the beginning, we asked ourselves two questions that we have carried along all these 7 years actually. And one of the questions was, what communities get of mumming? Why they are doing it? Because mapping this helps us to understand what they value about mumming, and this is also a knowledge that we can use for attracting more people and preparing the activities. So here are some of the examples that the community members have told. Mumming is a self-expression, definitely a way for showing your creativity and improvising. Definitely during the dark period of November, it's a fun activity to do with your mates, and it's uniting the community. The one that is existing in the location where you're living, but also it's connecting the mummers each other and the mummers to the hosting families. Mumming is accessible to everyone, meaning that there is no entering level. It's open for everybody. It doesn't matter from what gender you are, what disability you have. Also, you use for mumming what you have at home, so you do not need to buy something extra. Mumming is also a learning process, because when you first time enter to a mummer family, you get the knowledge, and after some years maybe you are taking a more active role on yourself. But mumming is also a reflection to year-round behavior. It's you can ask yourself, have I been a good friend enough so other people are inviting me to their mumming family, or am I a good neighbor enough the whole year around so mummers are visiting me? Also, what we see is that the more there are uniting points in a community, the better the communities work. And doing together creates collective memories, which is one of the strongest pillars of friendship. But also what we see is that mumming is a soft control in case there are grown-ups included, because you have the possibility to enter to homes that you are usually, or you might not visit in any other time, and it gives you the possibility to see your community members functioning at their homes, their soft spots, relations with each other, and if the situation is bad, there will be a knowledge who to help in the community when needed. So the other question that we asked is how we could measure a mumming community if we are saying that it's known all over Estonia. So we organized from the beginning a census. We asked people to register themselves if they are going mumming. And we have looked for the change throughout the years and looked for the indications that could make the change. So here's a diagram of the mummers throughout the years that have registered at the census. And what we can see is that there is a light rise throughout the years, except 2020 and 2021, when was the corona years, and St. Martin's Day and St. Catherine's Day were set during the lockdown, and people were not able to see each other, so meaning also going from door to door. But there are still registered members during that time, and I'm later telling you why. The other thing that we have looked is that how the age of the mummers has changed, and we see that with 2 last years there have been 5% raise in grown-ups coming back to mumming. So what has created the change? We have organized different educational activities from the beginning in partnership with other NGOs and local organizations. We have had podcasts, tutorials. We have the central web page where we are gathering all the materials about mumming. We have had partnership with retail and reuse companies. We have educated them on what and how to sell related to St. Martin's Day and St. Catherine's Day. And these partnerships have raised their own initiative. For example, in some shops, the salespersons have dressed up as mummers during the holidays, and they have used actually the text from our webpage for selling mumming-related products. Also, it's important to show good examples. We have asked celebrities to share their experience, to post their photos, and we have organized a VIP mumming, meaning that our mummers have visited the presidential palace or the table of ministers, and if the mummers are going there, the media will take it up and everybody will see it. 2 years ago, we had the possibility, thanks to the Living funding and thanks to Estonian Culture Endowment, to test the social outdoors campaign. I would say the test because we did not know what to expect as a result. But we knew that there had not been any outdoor social campaigns related to folk calendar events before in Estonia, and we wanted to normalize that this mumming tradition is as equal and as special as any other cultural event that has advertisements on streets. So what we did, we introduced 6 different characters. We had the call to action on the poster that asked them what kind or what type of mummer are you. This already urged them to use their imagination. We used the old tradition, but modern language and the subtle humor in those texts. And we believe that this modern language and in design and the subtle humor addressed those traditions to people who usually think that heritage is something boring or useless. So this helped to support this positive image and reputation of heritage, and hopefully made people understand that traditions are making everyday life more diverse, and maybe it's giving you the anchor in this hectic world. So the aim was to make people think more on how they are part of mumming bearers community, and what kind of role they can take in this community. And what we did see from the results is that advertising actually gives better results than locally initiated activities. People are seeing examples on public spaces, and those change their behavior and can make them think of themselves as a community member. And we had bigger impact in registered number of registered mummers. And what we also saw is that the characters that were mumming around were more versatile, meaning that those characters that we used on posters were more seen at homes. But communities themselves are also taking initiative. And here are some of the examples that they are doing. In one of the village, or parish actually, a bigger one, there was a discussion on a Facebook group. Children wanted to go mumming. People were waiting for mummers. But nobody did know where I'm going to get in and who is coming to visit me. So what the local community members did, they organized an orienteering app. They marked in the map all the places that waited for mummers. Everybody could download it. They could go and visit the places. And they, even in each place, they had these educational questions about mumming traditions. Other thing that is done is that in another community, children have asked themselves if they can go and mum with elderly people. And there are communities where mummers are purposely going to nursing homes, so that those members of the community who are chained to the beds or to closed houses can also belong to the community. And when the first place we offered the experts to educate, then now we see that experts are coming inside from the community. And from my objective view, I also see that the stronger the mumming community is, the more it can affect the foreign tradition. For example, Halloween is very close to St. Martin's Day and St. Catherine's Day. But what I'm seeing for last 3 years now, is that when the Halloween mummers are coming to my home, they have started singing, they have started asking riddles, and this way we can domesticate foreign traditions. And when I was mentioning the lockdown years, we asked the community what we can do not to get the result in registered mummers as 0. So we made a guide of safe and responsible mumming. We offered options what you can do. And actually virtual mumming is something that is used until now, especially by the people living abroad but still want to go mumming. And in one of the communities, people were telling to the others that we are gonna go mumming under the tree, between the houses. And what the community members did, they hold the distance and they were gathering somewhere just to hear and be part of this mumming. So we use those illustrations to show the examples that you can still sing your songs even in the bathroom. And what if the community is not heard? If it's too much over-organized? In one of the islands in Estonia, we have had the situation where the local municipality has initiated to organize St. Catherine's Day celebrations in one certain building, just to raise the reputation of this building and centralize the activities to one place. But what this has done is that it's divided the community into two. There are those who want to continue on the old way, those who are going to the centralized place, and as a result, the community is not feeling as a whole, and the essence of the mumming has receded. So, to make the voice of the mumming community more heard, we started a mumming cooperation assembly, meaning that it's based on democracy, free will, everybody can join in whenever they want, all year round. And this is the place for those tradition bearers that want to speak up for the developments of mumming customs. And one of those places where they had the chance to speak along was when 2 years ago a discussion raised on a sensitive topic, how the historical roles such as a gypsy or Jewish merchant or a woman with a beard are seen in nowadays context. So this led to a seminar. We have in Estonia an opinion festival, so we had the seminar there. We had some opinion articles, some statements, and this discussion actually showed us that there are people speaking up that we did not even know that they feel that they are part of the mumming community. And as the conclusion to this topic, we agreed that we cannot erase the history, but we need to be aware of the change of the society, because mumming has always been and is still today the reflection of the society. And as a reflection of the society, what we did, we asked people to send new ideas, what kind of mumming characters engage them today. So as a result, there were some topics that we received over 100 different characters, and some of the topics were coming up several times. War and peace, new habits and professions, for example, social media influencers should be inside mumming community or families, subsistence and investing, also exotic and domestic animals as a monkey you see here, and environmental and ecological sustainability, as you can see here, environmental St. Catherine's Day mummer. So one thing that I want to mention is that for the community member, it's also important to receive the attention from outside the community. 3 years ago, French photographer Charles Terje was in Estonia and capturing Estonian mumming characters. And when they were spread, people from the mumming community said, "Oh, that's cool, really cool, we look that cool." And attention from the outside of the community gives the message to the bearers that what we have is valued. So I started somewhere with a question, if the whole country can form one community. We see that the percentage of unopened doors has remained the same during the years. So there is always someone who does not want to belong to the community of mummers. And we accept that as well. So thank you, and let's get mumming.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. I hope you're all well after a very inspiring day. I listened in this morning. And thank you so much for the invitation to give a presentation about the Dutch way to Faro. My name is Machteld Linsen, and I'm the manager of the Faro scheme at the Cultural Heritage Agency of the Netherlands. My organization is a department of the Ministry of Education, Culture and Science, and it was the Minister of Culture that in 2018 embraced the Faro Convention. She asked, what do we need to sign and ratify this treaty? After having read the full treaty once and again, we advised the minister to postpone the formal procedure. We suggested to start a dialogue with the heritage field instead as a first step. We were convinced that a bottom-up process would be appropriate, matching the Faro ideology, a process in which the heritage field is in charge. I have a question. Can you hear me well? Because I hear an echo on the line. Okay, I'm sorry for the inconvenience. What I can do in the given time for this presentation is to take you along the journey we have made in the past years. What did it bring us, and what were the challenges along the road? How did we start at the beginning? There was a lot of enthusiasm. In the Netherlands, volunteers play a major part in everyday heritage care. The Faro Convention acknowledges that contribution. Besides that, the spirit of the convention fitted in perfectly well with current developments in our society. In the cultural sector, diversity, inclusion, and plurality had already become mainstream. The heritage field, however, was more conservative. The controversy over the tradition of blackface, for instance, Zwarte Piet as we call it, was year after year trending topic, even on CNN. Other stakeholders in the heritage field questioned the totality of the convention. The Faro Convention dates from 2005. We didn't sign it then, so why sign it now? What's the urgency, since we don't deny people their cultural heritage, like in the Balkan War, do we? And what on earth do you think we studied for? We have studied for 5 years, and now you say just normal, ordinary citizens can decide what heritage is. So there was enthusiasm, but there was also resilience. So we started the process without knowing the outcome, a process in which the heritage field is in charge. And we didn't know beforehand how we would proceed. It was an organic process. Step by step, it developed. We start with an explorative phase. Our main aim was to find out what the added value of Faro is for the Dutch heritage field. We started a bottom-up process. We took our time. It took from 2019 to 2022. We organized meetings, excursions, lab situations, seminars and webinars, research projects, etc. And we recruited ambassadors to conduct their own investigative processes and dialogues on a local level. We also launched a subsidy scheme for Faro projects in everyday life. So along several lines, we asked all kinds of people, heritage professionals, as well as policymakers, as well as volunteers, citizen initiatives, heritage communities, professors, students, entrepreneurs, influencers, etc. What do you think Faro is about? How can it help us to improve heritage care in the Netherlands? We asked them to reflect on 3 questions. Why do we preserve heritage? For whom? And how is everyone involved in decision-making and daily heritage care? After decades of professionalization, stimulated by other international treaties, in the Netherlands we have a well-organized system to protect heritage. But at the same time, society has been put at a distance. Governments and institutions took over the process of heritage making and heritage care. So for us, Faro is a chance to bring back the balance in responsibilities and encourage cooperation. The heritage field defined during those years 3 core values, which represent our joint ambitions for the heritage field in the coming years. The first one is to enhance civic participation, not only by creating access to heritage, but also by means of governance, having a say in decision-making processes, feeling aware and responsible for your own heritage. So from access to ownership. The second value is to have an open mind for unrecognized heritage and citizens' expertise. And the third value is to explore the added value of heritage for social issues like social cohesion, loneliness, well-being, exclusion, and polarization. In the Netherlands, we already have an instrumental policy of heritage for spatial planning and economics, but there were barely any relations with the social domain. On the left, I think it's on the left, yes. On the left, you see a project that includes all 3 core values. In this project, football heritage is used to activate the memories of aged people with Alzheimer. The supporters of the football club are the guardians of and the experts on their heritage. Their heritage is not recognized, however, and supported by the traditional heritage care system. So a more open mind of the system is needed. Furthermore, getting into contact with football supporters through heritage can contribute to a better understanding between government and certain groups in society. This is another example in the north of the Netherlands. As you might know, we have earthquakes in this area due to the gas extraction. There's a lot of damage to the houses, and people feel unsafe, ignored, and no longer in control of their own lives. Government has failed over the last year to solve the problems. So there is a lot of distrust towards the government. One of the things we try to do in this area is to organize participative archaeology activities. If there is a need for excavation, we involve inhabitants. They can draw up their own questions of research and participate in the field activities. By doing so, we hope to connect them to a government that does listen, that does cooperate and acknowledges their ownership of their past and their living environment. Having defined the 3 core values, some leading parties in the heritage field drafted up a manifest in which they urged the Minister of Culture to sign the convention. That was a major step. It showed that the heritage field was ready to adopt the Faro principles. And there was a second major milestone. Looking at all those Faro practices, we came to the conclusion that there was a lot of energy bottom up, but we also became aware of the rigidness and unwillingness of the system to adopt to those bottom up practices. Again, we asked all parties in the heritage field how the system should transform in a Faro way. We collected the answers they provided us with and drew up an implementation agenda with ambitions and ideas of how to change the system. We hold the pen, but the field delivered the ink. So I would like to give you some examples, and they're very bottom-up and practical, of possible system interventions they brought up. Thanks to the Malta Convention of the Council of Europe, archaeology is embedded in a tight corset of rules and guidelines in the Netherlands. But as a negative result, the community of volunteers in the archaeology decreased sharply. For there were no longer excavations in which they participate. A review of these rules and guidelines is needed to create more possibilities for participation of volunteers in other communities. A second one, if citizens want to buy an old school building from the local government for reuse as a local meeting point, they can't compete with private companies. And even when local governments accept a lower bid, they find European competition rules in their way. So how can we deal with the effects of those rules and make room for citizen initiative? On the left at the bottom, in the Netherlands, local historical organizations and cultural communities develop oral history projects. But the recording of stories and testimonies is not recognized as cultural heritage. So there is no providing support, no finance, and no policy. How can we change that? And if Faro wants to be a success in the future, adjustment in the education of young professionals is needed. Educational programs should be enriched with additional knowledge and skills to facilitate participation. And we have more and more of those system interventions that are needed according to the heritage field. Based on the manifesto and the implementation agenda, the Minister of Culture agreed to a second step and granted again finances to conduct a follow-up of the Faro scheme. And this scheme consists of 5 lines of action. The first is to implement the agenda of the heritage field. Again, we introduced a subsidy scheme for all stakeholders, for governments, institutions, educational organizations, and volunteers and other heritage communities. But this time, we only contribute to projects that have a larger impact on and aim to really change the system. On all 4 of the issues I mentioned before, we already received proposals to make those changes. The second line of action is to strengthen the already existing network of Faro followers and support them with knowledge exchange. We launched a digital community platform and we organize courses and knowledge exchange meetings. The third line of action is to sign and ratify the Faro Convention. The fourth is to influence policy making on national level and stimulate policy making following the 3 Faro core values by regional and local governments. And the last 5th line is to define parameters to monitor whether heritage care is conducted according to the Faro ideology. We are halfway the current Faro scheme. We already have supported over 20 interventions in the system of heritage care and hope to grant another 20 initiatives before the end of the year. We have initiated or contributed to a number of networks that exchange Faro experiences. We are an accepted conversation partner in a growing number of policy-making processes on a national level. We are, for instance, involved in the review of the Heritage Act of 2016 and the guidelines for appointing national monuments. In the meantime, the Netherlands have signed the Faro Convention, beginning of this year, January 24, in Strasbourg. And as we speak, we are working on the ratification trajectory. We are still learning by doing. One of the lessons we learned recently is that signing the Faro Convention created new dynamics. It is perceived as a point of no return, especially public administrators, policymakers, and legal staff members feel some sort of pressure to perform. And again, we are learning by doing and adjusting the scheme. We are focusing more and more on regional and local governments, and they ask us how to implement the Faro Convention in their policy. We already see that more and more regional and local governments commit themselves to the Faro principles and mention Faro in their policy plans. And we hope to include new administrative agreements between the national, regional, local governments. A second focus is on the legal staff colleagues of our ministry. They are asking us, what are the consequences of the right for cultural heritage of your own choice, as stated in the Faro Convention? And it's a question, is it about legislation, or is it about organizing processes to give a community access to the dialogue with the system? So once again, we struggle with difficult questions, but thanks to all the debates and experiences we already had, we can provide local governments not only with information about the convention, but also with good and proven practices of other governments, and we can show them there is a call for change from bottom up. And thanks to all the experiences, we can have a constructive dialogue with policymakers and legal staff officers. We can enlighten different points of view, and we can think out of the box. And thanks to the journey, we can prevent that ratification and implementation of the convention is reduced to window dressing and tick-the-box measures. For us, ratification is just the topping of the cake. Looking back, I can conclude that we have traveled up till now a path that can bring real change in the way we think about and perform heritage care in the Netherlands. Many thanks for your attention, and I'm going to try to find you back again.